Hello again. Today I want to talk about um, some of the struggles I've been having, and particularly the inner critic, and how how I experienced that, and what it's like to struggle with being very critical of yourself. So there are there are a lot of times in my life that I can recall that I've had a lot of difficulty with being kind to myself. And if you watch like Ross Rosenberg, um, he talks about self love deficit. He actually calls it a disorder. So he'll say SLD, and that's self love deficit. And I, until relatively recently, like the last year or two, have experienced that as normal. So what that looks like in my life is when I make a mistake. So if I'm working on something and uh, I drill a hole crooked or something like that, I'll go, "Well, you're stupid anyway, and you shouldn't have even tried to do this because you're a hack." And just saying that kind of stuff to myself, sometimes out loud, often in my head. Um, and if I was watching someone drill that hole crooked, I would say, "Oh man, that sucks. Maybe you should fill it in and try again." But for some reason, I've never afforded myself that same gentleness and grace and courtesy. So I always thought that that was because I am worse than other people, and because um, I deserve to be beat up for mistakes that I make. So I've often, justified it as, well, piece of crap anyway. So what, that's if anybody else was here, they'd tell you the same thing. Is sort of the mentality that I've had. And so I was going to talk about a different topic today. It's been a little while, I recognize, um, but the last few days I've really been struggling with this, and I can tell that I'm really having a hard time when I think to myself, "I'd be better off dead. I'd be better, I might as well just kill myself." When I start talking to myself like that, I know that I'm about as far down as I go. And when I say those things, it's more like wishing. I don't even know that it. I don't even know that I have a desire to die at those times, but um, the the emotional pain of how bad I feel about myself is seems like it's bad enough that I'd rather not be alive. So I tell myself those things, and I don't really understand why in the moment. But if I look back at it afterwards, like I said, I probably have had. Yesterday was really bad, where pretty much everything that I looked at, thought about, was negative, and just making decisions that I wouldn't normally make just because I was feeling so bad about life in general, I guess. Um, After the holidays, I've had some interactions with my family, which is always difficult. I had uh, holidays with my wife's family that were very similar to the kinds of things we used to do in my family growing up during holidays, and that was sort of triggering, it turns out. Um, so this all kind of worked together to put me in this mindset, and then um, I really stopped trying to take care of myself and stopped trying to do things that I want to do and, make sure that I'm taken care of. I have young kids, and so they are very demanding and have a lot of needs. And I was off work for a week and a half, and everything I did seemed like it was for someone else, and I didn't really have much motivation or time to do things for myself. And when I do that, I very quickly slip back into 2 years ago when I felt like that every day. There is joy in my life now. Today, things have gotten a little better. So let me talk a little bit more about the inner critic and how that works and how I experience that. So I mentioned that I wouldn't be that critical to other people, but for some reason it's okay to talk to myself like that. I think the reason that I do that is growing up, I never really mattered. And I often had to change my behavior to please my parents, or typically my mother would have difficulty with how the kids were behaving. I come from a big family, so she'd have difficulty with how the kids were behaving. You'd get yelled at and screamed at for everything you did. You would get hit with the paddle if she didn't like what you were doing. You get hit with the paddle if you didn't do something quickly enough. You'd get screamed at. And I eventually was told enough times that I wasn't doing things well enough or fast enough or good enough, or that I was lazy, that I started to internalize those messages. And I don't think I know that my mom never said to me, you should go kill yourself. She never said to me, you're a piece of shit. But I got the message. I'm a fairly smart guy, I think, and I was a fairly smart kid. And when you're a kid and you don't have support emotionally, and you don't have some of the things that you need to thrive, you have to sort of fill in those gaps of how the world works and how people view you so that you can survive. And so I filled in those gaps by taking on the mentality that I was bad, and that was the reason that my mother treated me like she did, and my father treated me like he did and was gone all the time. And so when I started to internalize that, I started to feel like I was not someone that mattered and not somebody that was worthwhile. I mean, who wants to be around somebody that's bad and nothing they do is right, and that kind of thing. Those aren't the kind of people I want to be around. So why would people want to be around me? I formed this opinion of myself when I was young. And so that's really followed me my whole life. And it gets better and worse. It's been better lately. I find that it often seems to track with my seasonal depression. So right now is early January 2020. It's about 3 degrees outside in Wisconsin, and you can't really go out and do much. My kids don't want to go outside, so I'm sort of stuck in the house. And when I was stuck in the house as a kid, that was never a good time for me because I was with my parents. And in summer, I was able to go wander get out of their hair and wander the neighborhood and stuff like that. But this time of year, I was always kind of stuck inside and cooped up and couldn't do the stuff that I used to do to escape. And that's sort of true right now too, I guess, because I like to work in the garage and I don't have heat in the garage, so I'm not going to go out there when it's 1 degree. Or if I do, it'll be for 20 minutes before I can't feel my toes. So I think that the reason that I talk to myself like that is because of the way that I see myself from how I was treated when I was a child. And I can't really find any other reason that would be true, that I would talk to myself like that, except that, the other option is that I'm somehow flawed and not a good person. And, what do I have to complain about? I have a good job that pays well. I have a wife and sweet kids and a nice house and all that stuff. So the alternative to this is something that happened to me is that I'm not a good person and I don't deserve any of this, and if I can't be grateful for it, what's the point anyways? So it's really a difficult thing to wrap your head around, because it's not like I can identify it coming on easily. I have to be, once I start telling myself I'd be better off dead, it starts getting kind of obvious, because you're painting the wall and you paint the wrong part, and you start talking to yourself like that. That's not a normal reaction to something simple like that, or something not inconsequential like that. So some of the things that I've found that really help are to try to put things in perspective. And by that I mean, think about my childhood and think about the things that kid dealt with back then that put me in that mind space where I was thinking of myself like that. And think about how the current situation is very different. And the people that I surround myself with are very different than the people that I was forced to be around growing up. And for me, not talking to my family has been a really good thing overall for me, but has been difficult at times because I do miss my family and I do feel guilty about not talking to them sometimes. So, man, I really get off on tangents when I do these. Anyways, think about when you're beating yourself up, if you struggle with this too, how can I be kind to myself? I've found that I'm the person who's most likely to be able to be kind to myself. I'm with myself all the time, so it makes for a better experience if I can take care of myself and be kind to myself. And this is hard to talk about. And so I still have shame about this, and that it's something I still struggle with even after 1.5 years of therapy. And I just want to encourage you, because if you're having a hard time with this stuff and you're just learning about what it is, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You'll fight with it the rest of your life, but you can deal with it. And I just wanted to encourage you today in my struggle that things are okay, even when you think they're not. And tomorrow will be okay too. And You just need to take a deep breath and give yourself a break. Have a good one.